Let's see.
Can
Actually,
you
let's,
remind what page that's on? Is that 144?
I'm actually
Yeah.
going to be reading out of my Apocrypha. I'll be reading from a different one.
Yeah, it's 144 here, Linda. Now, isn't that something?
That is something.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'll be reading from this one in case anybody's curious.
Okay.
And then that way you can compare notes too with how it's worded. I think I'll go ahead and just read all the way to 73
Okay,
since
I'm sorry. Can you just
uh,
say again where we're starting, which verse?
we're going to start in chapter 7, verse 45 through verse 74.
7:45. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, here we go. I answered and said, O sovereign Yahuwah, I said then, and I say now, blessed are those who are alive and keep your commandments. But what of those for whom I prayed? For who among the living is there that has not sinned, or who is there among mortals that has not transgressed your covenant? And now I see that the world to come will bring delight to few, but torments to many. For an evil heart has grown up in us, which has alienated us from Yahuwah, and has brought us into corruption and the ways of death, and has shown us the paths of perdition, and removed us far from life, and that not merely for a few, but for almost all who have been created. He answered me and said, listen to me, Ezra, and I will instruct you and will admonish you once more. For this reason, the Most High has made not one world, but two. Inasmuch as you have said that the righteous are not many, but few, while the ungodly abound, hear the explanation for this. If you have just a few precious stones, will you add to them lead and clay? I said, Master, how could that be? And he said to me, not only that, but ask the earth, and she will tell you. Defer to her, and she will declare it to you. Say to her, you produce gold and silver and bronze, and also iron and lead and clay. But silver is more abundant than gold, and bronze than silver, and iron than bronze, and lead than iron, and clay than lead. Judge therefore which things are precious and desirable. Those that are abundant are those that are rare. I said, O Master, what is plentiful is of less worth, and what is more rare is more precious. He answered me and said, consider within yourself what you have thought, for the person who has what is hard to get rejoices more than the person who has what is plentiful. So also will be the judgment that I have promised. For I will rejoice over the few who shall be saved, because it is they who have made my glory to prevail now, and through them my name has now been honored. I will not grieve over the great number of those who perish, for it is they who are now like a mist, and are similar to a flame and smoke. They are set on fire and burn hotly and are extinguished. I replied and said, O earth, what have you brought forth if the mind is made out of dust like the other created things? For it would have been better if the dust itself had not been born, so that the mind might not have been made from it. But now the mind grows with us, and therefore we are tormented, because we perish and we know it. Let the human race lament, but let the wild animals of the field be glad. Let all who have been born lament, but let the cattle and the flocks rejoice. It is much better with them than with us, for they do not look for a judgment, and they do not know of any torment or salvation promised to them after death. What does it profit us that we shall be preserved alive but cruelly tormented? For all who have been born and entangled in iniquities, and are full of sins and burdened with transgressions, and if after death we're not to come into judgment, perhaps it would have been better for us. He answered me and said, when the Most High made the world and Adam and all who have come from him, he first prepared the judgment and the things that pertain to the judgment. But now understand from your own words, for you have said that the mind grows with us. For this reason, therefore, those who live on earth shall be tormented, because though they had understanding, they committed iniquity, and though they received the commandments, they did not keep them. And though they obtained the law, they dealt unfaithfully with them, they received with what they received. What then will they have to say in the judgment? Or how will they answer in the last times? How long the Most High has been patient with those who inhabit the world, and not for their sake, but because of the times that he has foreordained.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of tough stuff there. I don't know where you got guys are, but to me, when I first read this, I thought, I thought, wow, ultimately very few will make it into his kingdom. But I'm thinking now, he's speaking of those in the first 6,000 years that walk in the, I think he's talking about the bride versus not bride.
Because there's so few.
Right,
There is so
right.
few. Hmm.
So I do think so that's what he's has been, in my opinion, working with the first 6,000 years. And then right at the end, he chooses those for the second Exodus, or those that will live physically into the millennial reign. It's not ultimately that all these others, that if you're not in first resurrection, you get second death. We know from scripture that's not true. But I do think what he's talking about that is so rare, and scripture talks about this, right? It's in is it Matthew? I'll find it real fast. Matthew 7, or okay, 7, I think. Um, well, where is it? It talks about oh yeah, Matthew 7:13. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. Now, to me, this destruction means death, not the second death, but just death. And there are many who go in by it, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. And what I believe he's speaking of right here is the bride, right? There's very few that find the true covenant and enter in that straight way, narrow gate.
I
You,
would agree with that because
okay,
it's it's also related, it's related to time as well.
right,
Um, you can only enter it through the straight and narrow gate.
right. So
In
it's
verse 51, it's the just.
Yes.
Yeah, the just
Yep.
are not many, but few. And back to what we've been saying, what does just mean? It means righteous, right?
Yep.
That we all sin, but we are covered with the blood of Yahusha again. And how do you get that? By being in covenant. You can't be a Christian, you can't be a Jew, you can't be Muslim, you can't be a Hindu, a Buddhist, go, fill in the blank. None of those get you in the narrow way, just the way, right? The way scripture speaks of.
I think what's interesting too is that righteous and just is the word Zadok.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
And those are the righteous few who get to commune with him.
Yep. And they did not stray, right?
Right.
And we cannot stray. Once we have the truth, once we have his spirit, there's no sacrifice left for us if we stray, if we leave him. And that's all over scripture, right? I'll just read you one. I think it's in Hebrews. Hebrews 10, verse 26. I'll just
What
go ahead and
chapter?
read Hebrews 10.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
start in verse 25 because we're close to the end. It says, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, which, yes, I wholeheartedly believe this counts. It doesn't have to be physical. Assembling ourselves together as in the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And boy, do we ever. And here's the kicker, verse 26, for if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fiery indignation which will devour the adversaries. Anyone who has rejected the law of Moses dies without mercy on the testimony of two or three witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be thought worthy who has trampled the Son of Elohim underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified as a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace?
Wow.
I think that's a very, in other words, if we turn away now, there's no, it's second death because he has shown us the truth. He has shown us his way, his word.
Yeah, and we kind of see the wrath in verse 29.
Yep. 29. Interesting. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. I think Peter talks about it too. It's in there a couple more times, but to me, right there, it can't get any plainer.
So here in 2 Esdras 7, verse 57, therefore judge which things are precious and to be desired, what is abundant or what is rare. So that's like first resurrection.
Right.
That's the first that's the first judgment.
Yeah.
And verse 60, the judgment which I have promised. That's that covenant promise. These are those who prevail and of whom my name is now named. They took his name not in vain.
Hey, Christina, you want to keep reading, or does anybody else have anything else?
Actually, how about we leave it for next week because this one's got some really interesting stuff. The state of the dead before judgment. And
Okay.
yeah, because it'll start going into what they get to see after they die before they enter into Sheol.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
that'll
think that would
yeah,
make
that's
an interesting conversation.
so what verse did we stop on?
We start next week on verse 75.
Okay. Carolyn wants to know what verse did you read, Linda?
I
Uh,
was kind of pulling words out of verse well, I read verse 57 and verse 60. I'll read this is the whole thing. So also is the judgment which I have promised, for I will rejoice over the few that will be saved, inasmuch as these are those who have made my glory now to prevail, and of whom my name is now named. Praise, yeah.
Yeah.
Second Esdras.
Yes. Second Esdras 7, 57 and 60.